Hello, everyone, and welcome to an exciting episode because this is a part 2 with the True Safety Podcast and part 2 with a really special guest, Chris Cameron, the Director of Occupational Health at Makovicka Physical Therapy. Chris, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. My wheels, I'm not kidding. We filmed on a Friday that last time, and my wheels were spinning all weekend because truly I meant what I said with, I haven't had a conversation with another physical therapist that truly understood all of my clients over these last years, all of their needs, their pain points, their future hopes and goals and dreams for their company. Like, you really, really understand all those components. You know, you understand your dream customer, which is a company that wants to first and foremost achieve zero incidents on the job, but is doing something about that. And that's what makes me really excited to chat with you. But yeah, did you have any thoughts after our first conversation?
No, you're right. It was after we talked, and even when we got off, it was funny how we'd said, holy cow, that was whatever it was, 40 minutes or whatever it was. And it felt like 10, and I still felt like there was, a lot of runway left there to go. So it'll be nice to cover the things we didn't catch last time and see what else we dig up.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the first thing that comes to my mind that weekend when I was wheels are spinning and then talking to customers, it's funny, but not funny. After our conversation, after we last filmed, I've had 3 strains on the job, working with customers. So we had 3 incidents there. And then I actually got a text message late last night. I was sleeping, so I got it in the morning, of a customer that a gentleman who, it wasn't even in his job description. It's not really in his job description to be out and about on the job site. He's an engineer on a drilling rig. And so he was just out walking. And as you know, we have crazy weather right now in Colorado. And he slipped, tripped, and now, oh my gosh, Chris, you're going to actually die when you hear, this is like our worst case scenario of what happens. So it's not even in his job description, and no one plans on getting hurt, right? This isn't the employee's fault. Goodness gracious, he just slipped, right?
Yeah, nobody goes to work planning to get hurt that day. At least most employees don't, right?
Absolutely. Right. And so my perspective for the audience here, I'm not blaming the employee. Gosh, poor guy. So he goes out there, he slips, he gets a strain. They take him to the doctor. The doctor does give him some first aid advice, but gives him a prescription for I don't even know what.
I knew the hammer was going to drop on this story eventually. I just didn't know where, and there it is.
No, and it gets worse. So the initial report was restricted duty. And here's the deal. When you employers, supervisors, whoever's, whatever title it is that you're listening, if you're sending an employee to a physical therapist or to even the initial emergency room, doctor appointment, urgent care, when you're sending somebody who's not familiar, you're sending an employee to a clinic that's not familiar with OSHA regulations, of course they're going to do a prescription maybe when it's not needed, but also throw on their restricted duty when it was restricted duty from lifting and all these things. Well, that's not even in his job description. So it didn't need to be a restricted duty to begin with. No. So then it spirals. They're getting him sent, long story short, getting him sent to get an MRI. And then he goes to another facility where they give him more prescriptions. And now he's out of work. And oh my gosh, I could get more into it, but yeah. Yep.
No.
How many times have you heard that?
I mean, I was just going to say that story's been written so many times over and over beforehand, which is, it's so hard because it just didn't need to be that way, right? I mean, kind of like we talked about last time. If companies can build relationships with providers, rather than just going into it blind, your outcomes are drastically improved for everybody. I mean, now your employee there is, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Odds are, I can picture this guy in my head, and an MRI is going to find something. General laborers all have something wrong with them. you watch the NFL now, it's all those guys are injured, right? It's the end of the season. They've all been banging each other around for 17 weeks.
Yeah.
Everybody's got something wrong. I mean, injured workers material handlers and laborers are the same. I mean, they've been doing hard work for years and years and years. Nobody's 100%, right? So if you throw somebody into an MRI machine, they're going to find something. And
what a great message. No, that is no joke. That is no joke. Take anybody right now who has been in the industry. Right. They're out there doing physical labor. Right. And of course and of course, not everything is going to be perfect, but then take into consideration maybe that person is lifting outside, of working, and maybe they're a heavy lifter or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so you have no idea. You're going into an MRI blind, employers listening, when you don't have a baseline for your employees. And that's what wraps into part one to part two. Yeah. But so anyways, since we chatted last, I've been thinking about our conversation so much, just because it's real life for me on a day-to-day basis. When customers come to me in a complete frantic, they just had an amazing year, 0 accidents, or maybe they had a couple first aids, and then bam, December has hit everyone hard because of the weather, because of, holiday fog, whatever it is. Yep. And bam, recordable as your Christmas gift. Yep.
And stress plays, you can factor in stress on people's concentration, and that, people get hurt when they're not paying attention. So, you can throw all that in. It's funny you bring this up, because I was sitting in a meeting with just a major general contractor around here, and I was sitting with their safety director going over year-to-date stuff and comparing to last year, and they have gotten killed in the last 2 years with recordables coming from exactly what you just said. It's coming from their foremen, who aren't supposed to be doing the heavy work and are supposed to know better. And it was something crazy, like 2/3 of their recordable injuries have come from people working outside of their job description. And you can get into the rationale and the reasons why, but it's almost exactly the story you just told is real life, and it's hitting guys I work with now.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, so both you and I are seeing this. It's industry wide. It's not specific to one type of labor, like manufacturing or whatever. This is affecting all workers across the board. Right. So we can both agree on that. Employers are facing the same issue, right? So what I would love to dive into is what was really exciting me, what we were chatting about off air, is the preventative side. And so many employers come to me at the end of the year, typically last quarter, and I'm sure you've heard this several times. Your dream clients are bringing up the word proactive and preventative measures. Okay, Chris, we had a couple recordables this last year, or we had a great year last year, and I want to continue on that track record. I've been told there's a buzzword about, we want to be proactive. We got to stop being reactive. We got to stop doing that. How do I get proactive with my company, ringing in the new year? It's 2023. We want to have an amazing year. What is some advice that you can give me, that you can give to those employers that you've seen work effectively?
Yeah, for me, it all starts pre-shift, pre-work. What are your guys doing before they get to the job site? Are they stopping at the gas station for a pack of smokes and 2 Red Bulls, or are we doing something? We obviously, and that comes out of truth because you see it all the time, right? But are they doing anything that is geared toward getting their body moving before they start doing heavy stuff? And we've heard the phrase industrial athlete, right? That was kind of been a buzzword around the last few years, at least in my world. So, what I do is I sit down and I compare kind of the job demands with companies to athletes, right?
Okay.
You wouldn't send a guy out to play a football game or a basketball game just cold off the couch, right? No, you see these guys, they're out, they're warming up for extended periods of time before they do anything with even modest or moderate exertion. Why aren't employees doing the same thing? So what we have done that's been pretty successful is we'll look at like your old pre-shift stretch program, and so many of them are just cold static stretches. So if a guy just put down a couple Red Bulls and hopped out of the pickup and does, some static hamstring stretch and maybe some wrist extension, we'll do a few neck circles. All right, let's go. I'm good.
I'm fine. Yeah.
I'm good. Where's the heavy stuff? I'll pick it up for you. No, that's a terrible idea. So what we've done is
That's good. Yeah.
gone back to the drawing board and put in way more dynamic stuff. Goal being, I want every part of your body moving, and I want your heart rate up for 5 to 10 minutes even before you go doing something, so that your body's warm. It's going to drastically reduce your soft tissue strains off the bat, because you're already loosened up before you start picking up the heavy stuff like I talked about. And it's good for overall health too, right? I mean, you want healthy workers, so why not give them a little bit of a workout prior to them doing their job? I mean, it's dual function. It's more than dual function. It's multifunction. There's so many good things you can do from having a dynamic program that involves all joints and a piece of cardio before these guys get going. And it's been super successful.
Oh my goodness. I'm like speechless and wheels spinning again, because I've heard and I've seen and I've used the practical 5 to 10 minute stretch. But, you just mentioned something that I haven't heard a lot before, which is that second half, that second piece, which is getting your heart rate up a little bit and revamping this program. And so this is so practical. This is a tool that everybody listening can adopt in their company today, starting out the new year. And so what are some, in case somebody is listening, an employer is listening, and they're bought in. Okay, Chris, like, this makes sense. I get it. I don't know how to take the first step. You're not in Colorado. Let's say somebody's listening in Colorado. How can I get started with a program like this? How can you help me here?
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to go about it, right? I mean, I have found in my dealings with companies, everybody knows everybody kind of thing. So I've had, pick the brains of the people either in your industry or in other industries, and see what they're doing. That's kind of the easiest place to start is the old ask your friends, right? I mean, we all do that when we're considering changing anything. Oftentimes we go seeking opinions of the people we know and trust. See what they're doing. If you don't get any good ideas from there, I mean, certainly I'm a resource, and I'm more than happy to consult with anybody who's interested on things like this. But it all comes back kind of to what we talked about last time is you got to find your person in your area that you know and that you trust that can help you with these things. I mean, PTs are great resources because this is the world we live in, right? I mean, we live in, I was brought up in the kind of the reactive stage of PT early in my career. Now we've gone better into the prevention, as other healthcare providers have too. Find yourself a resource, find yourself somebody in your area that knows this. And like I said, I'm certainly happy to help from a distance, but in the end, you got to have somebody that's in your corner and, obviously probably near you to help with all the things that we've talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great. And so when companies adopt a program like this, how can it pair up? One program is always great, right? So, all right, a stretching, getting your heart rate up. I'm bought in. I want to start doing this. What's something else that program can work in conjunction with too? So I guess what goes through my mind is it would be great if all, a dream world is employees are starting out with an effective program like this. And then you mentioned that buzzword, that keyword, that industrial athlete. What does that mean for people who haven't heard that term? Have you seen other companies do anything out of the box in addition to the stretching program? Like, what else can we do? We talked a lot in part one about having Yeah, pre-screening with employees. I think that that's really, really important.
Yep.
What I hear you saying is find a physical therapist, a partner that you love and trust. Build a relationship with them is step one. Communicate with that PT what our job descriptions are, what all of our work titles, things like that. Get a pre-screening. I think that that's fantastic. So you can get a baseline of your employees. And so what other program do you recommend? Did you see this?
Yeah, I mean, I see people do it all different ways, right? I mean, there's so many ways to go about this. And, I've seen companies build in fitness challenges, weight loss challenges. I've seen them build in all kinds of different contests, even like a steps contest. I've seen companies do that where, hey, let's see how many, almost everybody's got some sort of pedometer on them now, be it on their phone or their watch or whatever. So putting in step contests as part of a overall fitness challenge. I've even got one major manufacturer that brings in a local gym twice a week to teach boot camp to their employees. So it's a cardio based fitness boot camp. They show up at 4:00 Tuesday, Thursday every week. And I bump into those guys all the time, but that's something, that's an investment that they're making in their employees, right? I mean, because healthier employees serve everybody better. So that's another thing you can do is your local gyms here starting next week are going to be slammed, but give them till about mid-February when everybody's New Year's resolution dies off, they're going to have some time on their hands.
Oh my gosh, that's genius. I haven't thought about that too much recently. I haven't seen a lot of companies that were working with really fully adopt a program like that, where they're being consistent with maybe an outside resource or, somebody coming in with some expertise that could maybe help bring that camaraderie in, but also bring some techniques, like you said, a kind of a boot camp, and that's consistent. I think that that's brilliant. And then also another huge takeaway and tool that you could adopt is the challenge. Having a steps challenge, having a fitness challenge, and it doesn't have to be all about weight loss. It could be, there's so many other indicators to measure that it's not just, does the scale go down, but maybe you can get creative and, go on body fat percentage, or there's just so many other different things there. But I think what I'm hearing you say is anything too that really involves the whole team. So that way there's some competition, there's some camaraderie around the team, the company, and that's what's going to make a difference with these just feeling valued, right? I mean, we talked about that. We talked about that a little bit in part one, was how many times does that matter most is when an employee feels value, heard, seen. And that makes a difference.
And it gets buy-in, right? When your employees are bought in, everything gets better, right? So this is another way to engage your employees and get buy-in for, it's going to help with everything. So they'll buy into whatever this, whatever your challenge is, whatever your competition is, however you want to incorporate it. But it just gets them involved another way, which is going to help get them, further committed to your company. That's what we want.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about some of the clients that you're working with, and maybe they have fallen into that category where you said it's the same story. You've heard it a million times. I just described a story of somebody who has a shoulder injury, and maybe it was a slip here in December, November. They're discouraged. I'm describing the type of employee that wants to get better and is motivated. They have that mindset, like they want to. So can you speak to that specific type of case, and what are some things that, what are some things that you see with that type of, like any advice for that type of employee, any programs that they could do while they're not fully back to work?
Yeah. So let's go back to the pre-shift, right? Pre-shift stretch. So this is where I get super into these things because it pays off in this type of case. So OSHA guidelines allow you to use the documented posted pre-shift stretch program in a post-accident situation. Okay. So a guy has a sprain strain like you talked about, let's say. we can lean back into that pre-shift stretch program and use it as intervention. Now, in my world where I'm building it to incorporate all parts of the body, some cardiovascular stuff, they can continue to work on themselves. Maybe if they're working, I don't know, they're not doing the heavy lifting stuff. They're still at work, but they're doing some other duties instead while they're healing. This gives them an opportunity to continue to work on everything. So they can maintain leg strength. If it's an upper extremity issue, they can maintain leg strength. They can keep their cardio up. They can maintain some flexibility as well. So I tend to call them stretch and flex program. Because I want them to stretch.
And this is post-incident. You're talking about post-incident, and this is something that they can use, something that they could do, be involved with.
Yeah, and even their provider can do it. So I have every company I work with, I build them a pre-shift stretch program, or I'll take what they've got and modify it a little bit. But then I keep them all. I've got them in a folder on my desk, so I know who's who, and I can pull that out. And if a guy's got a sprain strain issue, I can take their pre-shift stretch and flex program and use those things as intervention. So if let's say it's a lower extremity injury, I'm going to have squat in there. Everybody's got a squat in the pre-shift. I'm going to have some sort of a lunge. I'm going to have a hamstring stretch of sorts and a few other things that are built into that. So I can use them as an intervention for this guy's lower extremity strain. And then I hand it to him and say, here's what I need you to work on. Here's the things that I want you to do. I know you've done these before because you're supposed to be doing them before every shift. So I know you're familiar with them, right? So our risk of further injury is low because he's going to be doing something that he's familiar with. But now we can target it using, still playing within the bounds of OSHA, using that pre-shift stretch program. And that's why when I build them, I always tell companies, hey, I'm going to over-engineer this thing a little bit for you, and here's why. Obviously, for the preventative stuff like we already talked about. But now in a post-injury case, here's the utilization for that. I haven't had anybody tell me that's a bad idea yet. So I think it definitely works, and there's so much rationale behind implementing it for all different manufacturers or contractors or whatever you want to put in for an employer. There's a case to be made for being very broad with your pre-shift.
Yeah. And so many things run through my mind when you're describing that type of program because, oh my goodness, almost 9 times out of 10, actually, I almost want to say 10 times out of 10, that every time that we receive that initial physician's report and we're talking about a strain or, some sort of minor shoulder injury, let's say, it ends there as far as the employee's willingness to, or maybe the guidance ends there. Okay, well, I did hurt my shoulder. I do want to get back to work, but I have no tools, no tips how to really, truly get better on my own. Right. And because I've worked with so many employees where I am describing that employee that, this was a true accident. They're embarrassed. They, gosh, I didn't want this to happen. I want to do whatever it takes to get back to work tomorrow. How do I get back to work? And they want to get better. But when you're told, and maybe even prescriptions were recommended and the employee's like, no, I don't want them. Like, I want to get back together, but I want to get back and better. But the guidance ends there. So having a program where an employee is engaged in and they're doing these light exercises. They're continuing on with a stretching program that is hopefully, put in place. I like what you said. They're familiar with these stretches, so it doesn't provoke further injury. Right. But that is so ideal. So that way their minds are engaged and in a program, because I think that's huge post-incident. I think you and I both agree on that. But then also your follow-up with, hey, how is XYZ doing? How is this feeling for you? Because I feel like nothing would be worse than getting injured. You have the mindset, the willingness to get better, but you're not given any resources on how to get there. So that's pretty interesting.
Follow-up's huge, right? I mean, if you can tell an employee, hey, here's what happened to you. I'm going to validate your injury a little bit. Okay. I understand what happened to you. Here's why it hurts. Yeah. Here's what you can expect in the next 48 hours. And here's what I want you to do in that time. And while you're doing these things, here's what you can also expect. As long as you're reasonably close with those predictions and you've given this person some tools and some means to handle the pain on their own, but people are going to get better the vast majority of the time. And if they don't, within a couple of days, the picture just continues to get clearer. So you can be more, at least I can be more targeted with my recommendations to the employer, the employee, and whomever the doctor is, maybe that they do now need to go see, because we do have maybe a more substantial injury on our hands than we thought we did.
I see.
There's so much that comes out of that too, and getting some trust from the employee and the employer both is a big part of that as well, for managing a good outcome.
And I think too is having these programs in place. I know everyone listening is thinking, gosh, these are really, really good ideas. This makes sense. There's no logical reason why we shouldn't be doing this. But I think that employers get stuck right there and they don't. I want to mention that all of this is great if it's put into place before the incident. You're talking a lot about there's so much that you can do. There's only so much that you can do after post incident.
Right.
And I think when you have the full program, I really challenge everyone listening to adopt some of these programs, whether it be a pre-shift stretch program, paired along with a cardio. It doesn't have to be anything intense, but just something to get your heart rate up in the morning, paired along with a baseline testing of all of your employees before they're even, that's just a part of the new hire orientation. The whole package really does matter to set you up for success in this new year. And then one thing I want you to talk about or mention is for everybody listening, and this is for everybody. You don't have to, this is just advice that I'm selfishly wanting from you that the whole audience can benefit on is, yes, I hear what you're saying about the stretch and the cardio program. What is something that all of us that you would recommend as a physical therapist? What is something beyond for those overachievers? What is something that you recommend that we're all doing that's maybe a part of our daily habits and our routines to bulletproof us? Nothing is bulletproof, but to help bulletproof us going into this next year as healthy individuals, taking all titles out. Doesn't matter if you're a new hire, you're the supervisor, but what should we be doing to help our health this year?
That might have to be episode 3 that we go through, man. That could really be a long. I mean, we could go long on that one, because there is so much, and it all starts. For me, it starts. I start things at the beginning of the day. So sleep. How well are you sleeping? How much are you sleeping? And Fitbits or whatever, Apple Watch. I track my sleep. I encourage other people to do so too, because it's a real good indicator of how healthy you are.
What a wonderful piece of advice.
Yeah. Sometimes we think we sleep great and we don't. We sleep terribly. In having something to actually measure that beyond, I went to bed at 10 and it's 6, so I must have gotten 8 hours of sleep. You'd be shocked if you had some sort of wearable to tell you, no, you didn't. You may have been in bed for 8 hours. You might have only slept for 4. It's just, there's so much lost time that, that people miss on it, but the value of sleep in the recovery process is massive. When you get down to the physiology of it behind how your body behaves while you sleep, both the mental piece, but then the physical part as well, you got to give your body time to heal, time to recover, especially if you're in you're not high energy or very physically demanding or even mentally demanding job. It's very important for that. But then you can get into diet, you can get into so many things. Yeah. There's so many places you can go, but sleep is a big one that, certainly we as PTs, but a lot of the healthcare industry now is getting a little more invested in, because there's a lot there that needs to be unpacked.
Okay. How many times I mean, this is so interesting to explore your mind and your brain and the cases that you've seen this last week, this last year, over your whole career. But how many times are you working with an employee who was injured on the job? And let's say it's a minor injury, and you already know by listening to this employee's lifestyle, they're being honest with you. This is the sleeve, this is my diet, this is everything. How many times did those root causes contribute to the fiasco that they maybe got themselves into?
An injury is never about the moment that it happens, rarely anyway. There's so many things that factor in, whether it's, their knowledge of the job, their concentration, whatever else is going on, the team environment, who's working around. There's so many things that go into an injury. Oftentimes what I have seen is people get hurt doing stuff they do 1,000 times, and they're just not concentrating on what it is that they're doing. Their brain is somewhere else while they're trying to do their job.
Yeah. Yep.
That's when stuff happens. Well, concentration is correlated to fatigue, right? So if people are tired, they have a harder time concentrating. And if they're not paying attention to what they're doing, their risk of an injury is very high. So when I listen to people's stories, I'm piecing all that in my mind of like, don't you can sit there and tell me about, tripping over the 2x4 on the job site. I got a feeling that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And typically it is. It's all right. So tell me how that happened. All right. Tell me about your day that day. And then people just start to talk and tell you things, and you learn a lot about their habits and things that you can help them with. And, you start talking sleep to some guys and they don't want to hear it because they're like, oh, that didn't have anything to do with it. Okay, fine. But trust me when I tell you it probably had more to do with it than you think it did when it comes down to what happened to you.
Oh my gosh. When you say that this could be a part 3, I'm over here like exploding, because I can tell you, as a safety professional doing this for almost 10 years, working on the craziest incidents, you are 100% right. And this is why I'm glowing over here, is because I'm so serious that you get it. Like, you get it as a physical therapist, you get the employee, you get it. And what I mean by that is you understand that sometimes I'll talk to other professionals and they'll, blame everything on the employee. Oh, it was all his fault. It was all her fault. Or, everybody's pointing finger. Then maybe then the employee is pointing fingers too. But you're exactly right that you're talking about every incident that I've ever worked on. It is not the incident didn't happen in that moment. All the contributing factors is what you said didn't happen in that moment. And you're exactly right. I can name almost every incident where something happened and the employees said, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew that it was wrong. I did this 1,000 times. Oh, I'm so stupid. Or they're blaming themselves, or, my mind wasn't there, Apolonia, but I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I chose to risk it anyways because I'm short on time, because I'm stressed out. Yeah. One time, I worked on a crazy case where an employee actually mangled both of his hands in an auger. Oh. And when I was after the whole incident, after everything, I'm sitting down, listening to, trying to paint the picture of what happened that morning. And this gentleman, he's so lighthearted and he had a great attitude throughout all this, but he was like, I fist fought my coworker on the job in the morning because I'm writing the incident investigation. And he's like, he stole my Pepsi out of my refrigerator on they're living on location. They're out of state employees. So they get, there's this altercation in the morning and his mind's all over the place. And then he just wasn't thinking, like you said. So when you're talking about sleep and you mentioned a little bit about, diet, which it's already been 45 minutes again.
Yeah.
Like
we could get into stress management and stress's impact on the inflammatory cycle and that on soft tissue injuries. I mean, there's so much there that employers got to have kind of at least some aspect or some education on to help their people and reduce their injuries. I mean, there's, like I said, there's certainly episode 3 in there for sure. We could keep going, but this is a huge part of obviously what I do, but a huge part, for my employers that I work with. It's so valuable to get all of this put together for them, so that they know, the nature of injuries, they can know why things are happening, and then we can help control them. I mean, that's in the end, we spend a year getting to know these companies, and we spend all the years after that trying to control their issues for them. And, there's a lot of pieces that go into that. It's not just one thing one thing here, one thing there. It's, you gotta cover the whole thing for them, the whole picture for them to really have an impact.
Absolutely. What I hear you saying is it's not, yes, implement, adopt a stretch and, a cardio program. Yes, do that. Yes, have a baseline testing for your employees so you have, a starting point with all your team members. It could really help you out. Gosh forbid you're ever in a scenario with an incident. But what we're also saying, what Chris is saying, is it doesn't end and it doesn't begin there. And I do think that we schedule a part 3. I'm already thinking right now as you're speaking of the title for this episode, and how I feel that this conversation is best framed is how to prevent a recordable in 2023. And your advice of how to get your workplace into a healthier, stronger, and how to create an environment where we're healthier and stronger overall as humans, as individuals, is golden, is key. Chris, you're such a resource. I really, really appreciate your time in this episode. I think that there's so much that listeners, that I have certainly taken away. I heard you talk about stress as also a root cause, sleep first and foremost. Just employers need to be cognizant. You need to be cognizant of these other aspects that affect all of us throughout the day: sleep, diet, stress. So I think that those are all things that we could dive more into and get your advice on. Sure. But we'll leave you with that, listeners, because we've already taken 45 minutes. It
happened again, too. This happened last time. It just rolls by. You only think it's a few minutes. The next thing you know, we're 40 minutes in.
Yeah, Rats, what do we do? But I really, really appreciate all the practical advice. I think this is something that is really valuable to all listeners. So thank you so much, Chris. Do you have any other final thoughts for the audience? Again, we're going to link all of Chris's contact information so you can get some resources from him if you just are needing some more questions of yours, specific questions answered. You could reach out to Chris, but anything else, any advice coming into this new year?
Oh, I mean, I always tell employers, get to know your employees. I mean, no matter how many there are, and make sure that you've got engagement with all levels. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I mean, you get an employee with an axe to grind against you. That gets very expensive very quickly, right? So, happy employees are productive employees. Productive employees tend to be safe employees. So that's my quick advice, and obviously there's certainly more if anybody needs it. I'm happy to help.
It's beautiful. No, that's really, all of that is true. I've seen that time and time again. So thank you so much for your time, Chris. And hopefully we'll chat soon, okay? Thank you for everyone listening.
I appreciate it, Apolonia.